those of us who were around at the time, the 2nd of June, 1953 was a glorious day. It rained most of the time, but all the same, it was a really glorious day. It was the day on which Queen Elizabeth II was crowned.
Sirs, I here present unto you Queen Elizabeth, your undoubted Queen. Wherefore all you who are come this day to do your homage and service, are you willing to do the same?
God save Queen Elizabeth!
Mr. Churchill, or rather Sir Winston Churchill, the Queen had made him a Knight of the Garter a few months earlier, Sir Winston Churchill summed up the occasion as only Sir Winston could.
We have had a day which the oldest are proud to have lived to see, and which the youngest will remember all their lives. The splendors of this 2nd of June glow in our minds. Now, as night falls, you will hear the voice of our sovereign herself, crowned in our history and enthroned forever in our hearts.
Throughout this memorable day, I have been uplifted and sustained by the knowledge that your thoughts and prayers were with me. I have been aware all the time that my peoples, spread far and wide throughout every continent and ocean in the world, were united to support me in the task to which I have now been dedicated with such solemnity. The ceremonies you have seen today are ancient, and some of their origins are veiled in the mists of the past. But their spirit and their meaning shine through the ages, never perhaps more brightly than now. I have in sincerity pledged myself to your service, as so many of you are pledged to mine. Throughout all my life and with all my heart, I shall strive to be worthy of your trust. In this resolve, I have my husband to support me. He shares all my ideals and all my affection for you.
Of course, the Queen's reign had begun 16 months before her coronation, in February 1952, while she and her young husband were in Africa enjoying a short break before starting on a tour of the Commonwealth. They were relaxing in a hunting lodge in Sagana, which had been the wedding gift to the royal pair from the people of Kenya.
I saw our new Queen shortly after 9 o'clock this morning. Then, looking a little tired but very happy, she was driving away from the treetops hut where she and the Duke had spent the previous 19 hours looking out on the wild game. From treetops, the royal party drove back to the royal lodge. After only a very few hours of sleep last night, they were naturally tired, and so they had an easy morning. Communications to that remote spot are naturally difficult, and it was many hours before the shattering news reached them. Some members of the royal entourage, including the new Queen's private secretary, Mr. Martin Charteris, were going up to treetops tonight. They left the lodge in order to have lunch at the Outspan Hotel, from which the treetops excursion usually starts. Mr. Charteris had had his lunch, and at about 2 o'clock was just leaving the hotel when a pressman called him back. An agency flash had that moment been received, saying that the King was dead. There was no confirmation. Mr. Charteris got on the telephone to the Forest Lodge. Nothing had been heard there. Mr. Charteris was speaking to the Duke's equerry. He said, "Mike, I'm afraid our mistress's father is dead." The equerry reported to the Duke, but nothing was said at that stage to the Princess. At about 2:45 local time, the truth was known. The Duke went to the Princess and broke it to her. In the words of a member of the household, she bore it like a queen.
That same evening, the 25-year-old Queen and her husband left Africa for England, and the next day, the new sovereign was proclaimed.
Whereas it hath pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late sovereign Lord, King George VI of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown is solely and rightfully come to the high and mighty Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary, we therefore, the Lords spiritual and temporal of this realm, do now hereby, with one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the high and mighty Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become Queen Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen of this realm, and of all her other realms and territories, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith, to whom her lieges do acknowledge all faith and constant obedience with hearty and humble affection.
In accordance with the time-honored principle that the throne is never vacant, the Queen was deeply involved in affairs of state even before her father's funeral. There were privy councils to be held, audiences to grant, and functions to attend. The Queen's first public engagement of her reign was the distribution of royal maundy in March. She opened her first parliament in the November, and in the following month made her first speech in the royal tradition of Christmas Day broadcasts. Even the Troop in the Colour ceremony, which marked her birthday, was another kind of first for Her Majesty, as Richard Dimbleby tells us.
Thus, as the sun shines and the crowd cheers a rippling cheer that follows Her Majesty as she moves up the approach road towards the Mall, so ends the ceremony of trooping the colour on Horse Guards as part of the Queen's birthday parade. And Her Majesty now leads her Foot Guards back to Buckingham Palace. The first time that a reigning Queen has ridden with her troops on parade since that day 400 years ago, when the first Queen Elizabeth made her splendid speech to the militiamen at Tilbury under the threat of the Spanish Armada.
It wasn't only the Queen who had lots to do in the first year of her reign. The Duke of Edinburgh was very busy too, not only with those engagements he shared with the Queen, but with the hundreds of requests and invitations he received on his own account. He was in great demand too as an after-dinner speaker.
May I say how delighted I am to be here this evening for a number of reasons, but two of them, first of all, as Earl of Merioneth, and secondly, as Chancellor of the University of Wales. These two positions are very convenient. Because if I was only Earl of Merioneth, I would belong only to North Wales. As it is, the university has a foot in both. So I can therefore tell stories about either North or South Wales, depending on how I feel. I once served with an officer in the Navy whose name was Watkins, and he told me a story which he told me happened in about 1935. Apparently, a man went into a shop in Wales. I won't say which side it was. It doesn't really matter. And he said, there Have you seen in the papers this terrible fighting and an awful business going on in a place called I can't remember the name. Oh, I have it. Abyssinia. Oh, is it? So the chap he told us to said to him, "Oh, well, you can never tell what those madmen in either North or South Wales are."
And after Prince Philip, with the Joneses and the Williamses of the London Welsh, here's Raymond Glendenning with Colonel Harry Llewellyn of the British show jumping team. It was, of course, on his famous horse Fox Hunter that he 52.
Now Llewellyn's putting him into the in and out. Here he goes. Up over the first one. Up over the second one. Now into the wall. And he's over that one. And the post and rails, and that's where the danger was this morning. I think so far a clear round for Harry Llewellyn. This is most vital for Britain. If he can do a clear round, we shall be well in both the individual and the other. Now we come to the water, 15 foot of it. And here comes Fox Hunter, full belt. Oh, I think he's just over. Now steadies, into the gate, over the gate. I think there's a clear round with only one more jump to go. And here he comes now to the fancy garden wall, triple at the end. Clear round, I think! Clear round, I think!
I suppose one could say that for the Queen, the first year of her reign was one of preparation and learning by experience about the difficult job that was hers for life. Then in 1953 came the coronation, when crowds of happy people filled the streets long before dawn on that second day of June. It wasn't a pleasant morning, but by the time things began to happen, nobody was bothering about the cold or the wet.
Coach passes us, and the Queen, with the Duke of Edinburgh on her left, smiling happily, waving to the children, a forest of hands and handkerchiefs and caps, everything the children can bring out, as the coach passes down the embankment towards Westminster Bridge.
And later, in Westminster Abbey, came the solemn climax of the whole historic ceremony.
The moment of the Queen's crowning is near at hand. At a signal, the pages enter the theatre from all sides. They are wearing the livery colours of those they attend, and they bring the coronets to the Lord.
The crown of the faithful, bless, we beseech thee, this crown, and so sanctify thy servant Elizabeth, upon whose head this day thou dost place it for a sign of royal majesty, that she may be filled by thine abundant grace with all princely virtues, through the King eternal, Jesus Christ, our Lord.
The Queen is still sitting in King Edward's chair. The princes and princesses, the peers and peeresses, prepare to put on their coronets and caps, and the kings of arms their crowns. The Archbishop, assisted by other bishops, comes from the altar. The Dean of Westminster brings the crown. The Archbishop takes it from the crimson cushion. He raises it high in the sight of the people and reverently places it on the Queen's head. Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, is crowned.
Shortly before the coronation, in fact, almost while the crowds were assembling, the exciting news had filtered through that the British team under Colonel John Hunt had conquered Mount Everest, and that Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing had actually stood on its summit of 29,002 feet.
The last ridge running from the south summit to the top was quite impressive, and we realised that there was a good deal of hard work entailed in it. However, we didn't waste much time because our oxygen was being used all the time, and we set off along it. The snow, the actual ridge was composed of snow with cornices or overhanging ice on the right, and very steep rock bluffs on the left. However, by keeping halfway down the steep snow slope and cutting steps along it, we got along okay. And until we reached a rather difficult rock step about a third of the way along. This took a little bit of trouble getting up. It was quite a problem we found, but fortunately there was a crack between the rock and some ice on the right, and we managed to wriggle up this and get on top. But from there we continued on, and ultimately, continual step cutting, after 2.5 hours, we actually reached the summit. It's a very symmetrical and attractive summit, but it's a rounded top, and it is quite easy to move around on it and even to sit down on it. So you couldn't pitch your tent there.
To most people, that great achievement looked like a jolly good omen for the new reign. There were other achievements to be proud of too. England beat Australia at the Oval in the 5th Test and won the Ashes for the first time in 19 years. In the Cup final, Stanley Matthews and the Blackpool team had the Wembley crowd jumping up and down with excitement in the last few minutes of the match against Bolton. Raymond Glendenning was one of them.
Well, both sides have had plenty of chances. They both should have won the game conclusively, and they haven't. So perhaps the draw is fair at the moment. Here come Blackpool again. Right half, pushing that ball through. Fenton, through to Taylor, through to Matthews. Matthews on the edge of the Bolton penalty area, dribbling right in, past his man, 2 yards out, squares it, hit it somebody. Yes, it's there! It's there! Perry has scored! Perry has scored number 4. Laid on by Stanley Matthews, Blackpool have scored number 4.
And in the Derby of Coronation year, Sir Gordon Richards achieved his greatest ambition on Pinzer and incidentally beat the Queen's horse Oriole. Glendenning was at this event too.
Now, as they come down to Tottenham Corner, it's Chicampore racing away now, being followed by Pinzer, and Oriole has moved up there. Oriole coming the outside, but Chicampore, Pinzer, Mountain King, Good Brandy, and here's Oriole coming to join them. But it's still Chicampore in front of Pinzer. Now Pinzer's been shaken up by Gordon, and it's Chicampore, Pinzer in behind, Mountain King, Oriole under the whip, Good Brandy there, and that's the order as they come now with about 2 furlongs to go, and Pinzer's coming to the front. Pinzer is mastering Chicampore. Pinzer now 1 length clear with 1.5 furlongs to go. Can this be Sir Gordon Richards' derby? It looks like it. He's 2 lengths clear. Gordon Richards with 150 yards to go. Oriole challenging for second place. Sir Gordon Richards is coming past the post. 50 yards to go. Tremendous cheering. Sir Gordon gets his first derby in Oriole. Third King Horn.
Towards the end of 1953, the Queen and Prince Philip set out on their Commonwealth tour to replace the one they'd had to cancel because of the King's death in 1952. They took off in the BOAC airliner Canopus, and once again the Queen made history by becoming the very first. Here at home we enjoyed the mildest winter but one for 200 years, and in the spring Oxford won the 100th boat race, and later Roger Bannister shattered the 4-minute mile.
For me it was really a do or die year because I realized that I would have to give up running in order to take up medicine after the year 1954, and I felt that I was very lucky to be about at the time when the 4-minute mile had become the critical achievement. This achieved with Christopher Chataway and Christopher Braysher, I then went on to something which for me was much more important, namely the race against John Landy, who was then the world record holder, in the Empire Games in Vancouver, the race in which we both beat 4 minutes. And then perhaps just as important for me, the race of the European Games in Bern. In a way I was sorry that there weren't any Olympic Games, but with these 3 victories behind me, I felt I could at any rate retire at peace.
In May, the Queen and the Duke came home from their Commonwealth tour. While they'd been away, we'd been getting used to singing God Save the Queen instead of the King. And everyone was thankful to see the end of identity cards and of all food rationing, which had been with us for nearly 15 years. At Wimbledon, the aging tennis star Drobny beat Ken Rosewall, and at White City, Vladimir Kutz very nearly beat Chris Chataway. Very nearly, but not quite. And Rex Alston had a thrilling experience to report.
220 yards to go, and Chataway is still hanging on. This is a magnificent race, but still the Russian is in the lead. 150 yards to go. They've already done a new world record for the 3 miles, and now it's 100 yards to go. Can Chataway do it? I don't believe he can. He's going all out. Yes, he's coming up to Kutz. It's a marvellous race. Chataway is just going to do it, I think. 50 yards to go, 10 yards to go. Chataway has done it. Chataway has done it. by about 1 yard, and the most wonderful race you ever saw.
In our homes, more and more of us were going in for television. The magnificent coverage of the coronation had proved that the age of TV had arrived and that soon the box would be a must for everyone. No wonder people grumbled when the BBC asked for and got an increase in TV licence from £2 to £3. It was on the radio, however, that we heard the Duke of Edinburgh pulling the doctor's legs at a British Medical Association dinner.
It's a great relief to me to find that I've not offended the BMA nor the medical profession. I've been ill before and I expect to be ill again. And it would be a great sadness to me if I was the subject of a boycott. This evening, it's my duty and pleasure to propose a toast to the common health. Now, I know exactly what is meant by that, but when I first saw it, it struck me that the name was a bit awkward. It somehow reminds me of the common cold. I'm sure it's not supposed to. I also understand that the Minister of Health is to reply, which is also most appropriate. I hardly dare say that the last time I met him was in a mental hospital.
In 1955, Sir Winston Churchill again dominated the news.
The announcement from Buckingham Palace said, "The Right Honourable Sir Winston Churchill had an audience of the Queen this evening and tendered his resignation as Prime Minister and First Lord of the Treasury, which Her Majesty was graciously pleased to accept." Our parliamentary correspondent says the appointment of a successor to fill Sir Winston Churchill's post as Prime Minister and First Lord of the Treasury will constitutionally lie with the royal prerogative. It's generally assumed at Westminster that the choice will fall on Sir Anthony Eden.
Billy Graham came to England, and a general election confirmed Sir Anthony Eden with a Tory majority of 59. At snooker, Joe Davis made the maximum break of 147. He sank 15 reds in succession, each followed by a black. Then all the colours in sequence, the yellow, green, brown, blue, pink and black. A magnificent performance and a worthy ending for the Leicester Square Hall, which closed a few days later. I must have been thinking of Joe Davis when I wrote this song.
You're a record breaker. If you can fly like a bird, if you can play the highest note ever heard, if you could swim the Atlantic, then the records, they would go frantic. If you're the rarest, the fairest, grown the longest hair, if you're the oldest, the boldest, got the most gold, if you're the newest, the fewest, largest tattoo, then you're a record breaker. You're a record maker. You're a record breaker. If you're the wildest, the mildest, cleverest child, if you're the strongest, longest, never been wrong, if you're the latest, the greatest, then you can state that you're a record breaker. You're a record maker. You're a record breaker.
1955 was also the year when the BBC's monopoly was broken and the initials ITV crept into everyday speech as the commercials invaded our homes. The following year, the Suez Crisis blew up, and the British Lion, using the voice of Sir Anthony Eden, roared for the last time.
Fear of being gradually spreading in these Middle Eastern lands, while the Egyptian government under Colonel Nasser sought to establish its dominion over them all. As a consequence, the danger of an outbreak of war, which would have spread through the whole Middle East, make no mistake about that, was immediate and menacing. It wasn't only a question of an Arab-Israel conflict, which has been with us ever since the armistice of 1949. Graver still in the long run, both for our interests and for peace, was the growing military power of the Egyptian dictator, framing plans of conquest which he has never attempted to conceal. Well, I know that many have expressed surprise at the vast extent of captures of Soviet equipment made by the Israeli forces in the Sinai Peninsula. They certainly seem to be larger than was required for the Egyptian forces stationed there. Well then, who can really doubt that aggressive plans had been long and carefully laid? They had indeed been proclaimed. And in all this dangerous activity, of which the seizure of the canal formed only a part, no one should have doubted that an explosion was inevitable sooner or later. Mr. Chairman, we make no apology and will never make one for the action which we and our French allies took together.
We got used to seeing young men in long tight jackets and drain-pipe trousers. We learned that they called themselves teddy boys. Some of the older men among us shuddered at the idea of squeezing their feet into winkle-picker shoes. Coffee bars were the in thing, and it was still possible to tell the boys from the girls by their dress and their hairstyles. Unisex was still a long way off. But rock and roll was here right now, and so was Gene Vincent.
Well, Bebopalula, she's my baby. Bebopalula, don't make me baby. Bebopalula, she's my baby. Bebopalula, don't make me baby. Bebopalula, she's my baby. She's a gal in the red blue jeans. She's the queen of all the teens. She's the woman that I know. She's the woman that loves me so. Bebopalula, she's my baby. Bebopalula, don't mean baby. Bebopalula, she's my baby, you're my baby, you're my baby. Walk to me, son. Here we go! Here we go! Ah, get low.
Oh, my old man's a dustman, he wears a dustman's hat. He wears gold-blimey trousers and he lives in the council flat. He looks a proper nana in his great big hobnail boots. He's got such a job to pull them up, but he calls them daisy roots. Some folks give tips at Christmas and some of them forget. So when he picks their bins up, he spills some on the step. Now one old man got nasty and to the council wrote, next time my old man went round there, he punched him up the throat. Oh, my old man's a dustman, he wears a dustman's hat. He wears gold-blimey trousers and he lives in the council flats. Next time you see a dustman looking all pale and sad, don't kick him in the dustbin, it might be my old dad.
Lonnie Donegan and all the memories of the skiffle era which his name and that tune conjure up. Of course, if it's cricket you'd rather remember, you'll certainly recall Jim Laker at Old Trafford taking 9 Australian wickets in the first innings and all 10 for 53 in the second. In politics, Sir Anthony Eden resigned as Prime Minister because of ill health, and in 1957 Mr. Harold Macmillan succeeded him.
It's a proud thing to be given the office of Prime Minister of Britain. Every now and again, since the war, I've heard people say, isn't Britain only a second or third class power now? Isn't she on the way out? What nonsense. This is a great country, so don't let's be ashamed to say so.
In racing, Raymond Glendenning, then one of radio's star commentators, was at Epsom to watch Her Majesty's filly, Carrozza, win the Oaks.
And Carrozza takes the lead now. A furlong out, it's Carrozza with Taitinger and Rose Royale and Silken Glider. And it's still Carrozza. It's Carrozza from Silken Glider. Rose Royale's dropping back a bit. And Carrozza it is. Challenged now by Silken Glider. And Carrozza in the last 150 yards. For Her Majesty the Queen. Her legs clear. And Piggy's working hard on her. Silken Glider's coming right up. At the post, it can only be a fraction if it's Carrozza. And there is the great roar, the hats are waving. Her Majesty the Queen has won the Oaks.
The Russians too had a winner that year, or rather two. This is how the radio telescope at Jodrell Bank heard the first one. And the second followed 3 weeks later. Radio Moscow explained.
The second Soviet-made satellite consists of the last stage of the carrier rocket, with containers holding scientific apparatus. The satellite is carrying a pressurized container with a dog as experimental passenger. The container is equipped with air conditioning, a supply of food, and instruments to study vital activity in cosmic space.
That poor dog Laika. We all felt sorry for her. Although the Earth satellites themselves captured everyone's imagination. Another thing that fascinated us, at least it did me, was the government's latest gimmick for encouraging national savings. ERNIE, the electronic random number indicator equipment, which was to decide, and still does, who gets rich quick through premium bonds with big prizes. There are no prizes, though, for guessing the name of this great artist.
Well, 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 ho, 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 bum, 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 10 o'clock. Time I went in the air.
This is the BBC Home Service. Here is the news.
Oh, for crying out loud. I can't get them on me portable. Tune into Japan and there they are. That's better, that's better. This is GLK London transmitting on the shortwave band on 10.4 meters at a frequency of 250 megacycles per second. This is GLK London calling HB24D Tokyo area. GLK London calling HB24D Tokyo. Come in, Tokyo. Hello, hello. HB24D Tokyo. Yoki, how are you? No, no, no. How are you? No, no. How are you? How are you? How... This London GLK, how getting are you? Oh, never mind, no. How's the weather out there? No, what is the weather like? No, no, is it raining? Raining. Pitter-patter, water. Water, wet, ooh, nasty, yes. Hello, hello. Yes, 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 listening, go ahead. What? Sorry, what was that? Yes, yes, I can hear. No, understand. I cannot understand. No comprendi. Say it slowly. Slow. Can you put it another way? In English, fool. Slowly now. Slowly. Yes. It is raining not. Oh, good. Very good, yes. Yes, it is raining not here also. Yes. God, this is hard work. Well, what have you been getting up to then? Yes. Getting up to... No, no, no. Not when you're getting up. Getting up to what? What have you been doing? Doing? You. What have you been doing? What have you... No, no, no. What time is it over there? Time, o'clock. Big hand, little hand. Whereabouts? I know it's not raining, you told me. Start again. Here in London, 10 o'clock. What time in Tokyo? What time? This is GLK London signing off. Yes, goodbye, Tokyo. Yes, it's been very nice. Yes, same time Monday. Eh? Yes, oh yes, sayonara. It's marvellous to be able to converse with people all over the world. People different to yourself with something new to say. It broadens your outlook. Increases your knowledge of things. I bet there's not many people around here who know it's not raining in Tokyo.
Tony Hancock, of course. Undoubtedly one of the most dramatic moments of Queen Elizabeth's reign came on the 26th of June, 1958. The sportsmen and women of the Commonwealth were assembled in Wales. Her Majesty was ill, but she sent them this recorded message.
I want to take this opportunity of speaking to all Welsh people, not only in this arena, but wherever they may be. The British Empire and Commonwealth Games in the capital, together with all the activities of the Festival of Wales, have made this a memorable year for the Principality. I have therefore decided to mark it further by an act which will, I hope, give as much pleasure to all Welshmen as it does to me. I intend to create my son Charles, Prince of Wales, today. When he is grown up, I will present him to you at Carnarvon.
The Welsh people and athletes at Cardiff cheered themselves hoarse at that announcement, as you heard. And their enthusiasm was echoed throughout the country and the Commonwealth. There were cheers too, if not quite so universal, for the British road builders. It's hard to remember now what motoring was like before we had the motorways in Britain, and yet it was only 1959, 18 years ago, that the M1 was opened, and only a very small part of it then. Mr. Ernest Marples, then Minister of Transport, was the man to cut the tape.
This motorway starts a new era in road travel. It is in keeping with the bold, exciting and scientific age in which we live. It is a powerful weapon to add to our transport system. But like all powerful instruments, it can be a power for good or evil. It will bring immense benefits if drivers use discipline, common sense, and obey the rules. But disaster and tragedy may descend on those who drive recklessly or selfishly. For on this magnificent road, the speed which can easily be reached is so great that senses may be numbed and judgment warped.
In the news in 1960, radio and television had three important events to cover. On February 19th...
This is the BBC Light Programme. News has just come from Buckingham Palace. The Queen has had her baby. It's a boy.
On the 6th of May, there was the wedding of the Queen's sister, Princess Margaret, to Mr. Anthony Armstrong-Jones. And from the Olympic Games in Rome came this running commentary by Alan Williams.
As they go to the far end to turn for the last time. Two girls out on their own now. Ulsterman of Germany and Nita Lonsborough of Britain. I'll give you the terms as it comes. At the far end of this pool, Ulsterman now, Lonsborough now. And if Lonsborough can keep that up, Lonsborough's going to win the gold medal for Great Britain. And they're coming down now for the last time. Ulsterman and Lonsborough. Has Lonsborough really shot it too much in the last length? We don't know. Nothing in it, a great race. Forget third place. It's between Ulsterman and Lonsborough. Can Lonsborough do it? She looked to her left then. She's up to the halfway mark. Has she got any energy in reserve? Half of the pool to go. I think maybe Anita Lonsborough can do it. Ulsterman is weakening. I think she is. Anita Lonsborough's pulling ahead. Can Anita do it? The 19-year-old girl from Huddersfield. This is a great race. 15 yards to go. Lonsborough, Ulsterman. Lonsborough does it. I think Anita will do it. This great girl from Huddersfield. Lonsborough wins. Lonsborough wins, I think. Lonsborough wins!
Alan Williams' voice eventually did get better. Now, the sentimental among us were sad to learn that from the 31st of December 1960, Britain's smallest coin, the farthing, was abolished. The following year, the Russians had Major Yuri Gagarin hurtling through space, and he was the first man to do so.
All Moscow is waiting to give a hero's welcome to the world's first spaceman, Major Gagarin of the Soviet Air Force. And to begin the bulletin, here's a Moscow recording of his voice speaking to Russian scientists as he went through space.
Major Gagarin said,
that the flight was going on successfully, normal, visibility was good, and that he himself was feeling good as well.
And 3 weeks later, unemployment rose sharply among bookies' runners as betting shops became legal in Britain. In June, the Duke of Kent married Miss Catherine Worsley, and at Wimbledon, Angela Mortimer beat Christine Truman in the women's singles. Tottenham Hotspur won the League and FA Cups, and the forecasters started to use centigrade instead of Fahrenheit in their weather reports. Boy Scouts were given permission to wear long trousers, and Jean Shrimpton modelled her miniskirt. In next to no time, most girls' skirts shot up well above their knees, and many a man who thought he was past it began to feel young in heart, which was the title of the show at the Victoria Palace. This was the last appearance as the Crazy Gang of Nervo and Knox, Norton and Gold, and Bud Flanagan. It was a sad day for music hall when Bud said farewell.
It has been a wonderful career, let us put it up, at 32 years nearly when we've been together, all of us. And we've enjoyed every minute of it. And the laughs backstage with poor little Charlie being the butt, it's been something that has stopped the boredom. We have had our fun backstage, which you haven't seen and you couldn't see because the censor wouldn't pass it. But it's permeated into our work on the stage. And for 30-odd years, we have been really not only performers together, but pals. There's no doubt about it. Whenever we've been, say, back to Loser, we've always gone to Jimmy Gold to borrow a bit. And outside of a 10% interest, he hasn't quivered or quavered. And the boys, all of us, bless them, we love them. And thank you all, you've been wonderful, and it's so grand to see all our old pals of all the years. Thank you very, very much.
The launching of the communications satellite Telstar made live television possible from almost any part of the world. At the Hammersmith Hospital, a successful kidney transplant operation was performed, and the winter of 1962-3 was terrible. We had the worst snowstorm since 1881, an unbroken frost for over 6 weeks. We all had pins and needles, but the searchers refused to conform.
Because of all my pride, the tears I gotta hide. Hey, I thought I was smart, I wanted hard, didn't think I'd do. But now I see she's worse to him than me. Let her go ahead, take his love instead, and one day she will see just how to say please and get down on her knees. Yeah, that's how it begins. She feel those needles and pins hurting her. Why can't I stop and tell myself I'm wrong so long? Why can't I stand up and tell myself I'm strong? Because I saw her today, I saw her face, it was a face I loved. And I knew I had to run away and get down on my knees and pray that they'd go away, but still they begin. Needles and pins.
5 outstanding events marked the year 1963. The Americans, who like to do things in a big way, paid the biggest possible tribute to Sir Winston Churchill. Their spokesman was President Kennedy himself.
We gather today at a moment unique in the history of the United States. This is the first time that the United States Congress has solemnly resolved that the President of the United States shall proclaim an honorary citizenship for the citizen of another country. And in joining me to perform this happy duty, the Congress gives Sir Winston Churchill a distinction shared only with the Marquis de Lafayette. In proclaiming him an honorary citizen, I only propose a formal recognition of the place he has long since won in the history of freedom and in the affections of my, and now his, fellow countrymen. Whenever and wherever tyranny threatened, he has always championed liberty. Facing firmly towards the future, he has never forgotten the past. Serving 6 monarchs of his native Great Britain, he has served all men's freedom and dignity. In the dark days and darker nights when England stood alone and most men, save Englishmen, despaired of England's life, he mobilized the English language and sent it into battle. The incandescent quality of his words illuminated the courage of his countrymen. Now his stately ship of life, having weathered the severest storms of a troubled century, is anchored in tranquil waters, proof that courage and faith and zest for freedom are truly indestructible. By adding his name to our rolls, we mean to honor him, but his acceptance honors us much more. For no statement or proclamation can enrich its name now. The name Sir Winston Churchill is already legend.
Another American also had a hand, or rather a glove, in making British history in 1963. Muhammad Ali, then Cassius Clay, fought Henry Cooper. Simon Smith was at the ringside.
The American boxer Clay here, certainly in control of the bout at the moment, but he does have his bad moments as Cooper comes in with that left hand. And he's only just out of range with this one, just over the top of Clay's crinkly hair. Just seconds left of this 4th round, and it's Clay poking out 1-2 left hands and then getting a good left hand from Cooper in return. A very solid one there by Cooper into Clay's face. Now Clay tries to come back with the left foot, and Clay is down! Cooper has downed him! Oh, a beautiful punch there! And as the bell goes, Clay had just been dropped by a beautiful punch from Cooper.
And alas, in the next round, our Henry was forced to retire with a badly cut eye, and the title went to Cassius Clay. In the October, Mr. Harold Macmillan's health forced his resignation, and for only the 2nd time this century, a peer became Prime Minister. The 14th Earl of Hume, who soon afterwards renounced his peerage and became Sir Alec Douglas Hume.
As you already know, I have today been appointed Prime Minister by the Queen, and there are 1 or 2 things I'd like to say to you at once. The first is that it is my task to serve the whole nation. The second is that no one need expect any stunts from me, just plain straight talking. And then I feel that one of the difficulties of modern life, when it's so complex and when world events move so fast, that Whitehall and government may seem very remote from the everyday life of the people. And therefore, I want the government to share all its thoughts with you, so that all of you may know in every home what the government is doing and why. And lastly, I've succeeded a very remarkable Prime Minister who has made a great impact on world affairs and on our national affairs too.
And on the 22nd of November came a news flash which shattered not only us, but the whole world.
Hello, London. This is Leonard Parkin calling Radio Newsreel from Washington. President Kennedy and Governor John Colony of Texas were shot today from an ambush as President Kennedy's motorcade left the center of Dallas, where the president was on a speaking tour. Mrs. Kennedy, first reports say, jumped up and grabbed her husband and cried, "Oh no," and the motorcade sped on. From then, all was confusion. The police immediately fanned out over a wide area through the streets. People screamed and lay down on the ground as shots were heard. An Associated Press photographer, it's reported, a man called Altkins, said he saw blood on the president's head. There was absolute pandemonium around the scene. The Secret Service men who always accompanied the president waved the motorcade on at top speed to the hospital. But even at high speed, it took nearly 5 minutes to get the car to the ambulance entrance there. Reporters saw President Kennedy lying flat on his face on the seat of his car. Men and women were screaming. This is all we have here in Washington at this moment, and for the moment I return you to Radio Newsreel in London.
1964 and what we came to know as Beatlemania arrived more or less together. Wherever the 4 lads went, their reception grew more and more enthusiastic until it reached its climax when John, Paul, George and Ringo touched down at Heathrow after their highly successful American tour. Hugh Moran was there to describe it.
Yes, now here they come.
Here come the Beatles themselves, waving. The crowd are really going frenziedly mad now. 4 of them are here. First down the steps is Paul McCartney, followed by Ringo. After Ringo, John. After John, George. There they are, all 4 of them, standing on the steps now, all wearing dark overcoats, white shirts, black ties, looking very smart, and almost very American, dare I say it. They're waving, the flashbulbs are popping, the cameras are whirring. The Beatles, the beloved Beatles from Merseyside, are back in this country.
3 days later, a foreign journalist asked Prince Philip if he thought Beatlemania was helpful or harmful for British youth. This was the Duke's reply.
I think it's entirely helpful, because I would far rather, I really couldn't care less how much noise people make singing and dancing. I'd much rather they made any noise they like, singing and dancing. What I object to is people fighting and stealing, and it seems to me that if these blokes are helping people to enjoy themselves, and this is far better than the other.
The Beatles, of course, were responsible not only for changing popular music, but for changing young men's hairstyles as well. Elsewhere, nappies were changing, and no ordinary nappies at that.
This is London. We are interrupting the program to bring you a news flash. The Queen has given birth to her 4th child. It is a boy who will be 3rd in succession to the throne. An announcement from Buckingham Palace, where the baby was born, says that Her Majesty and the infant prince are doing well.
And a little over 3 months later, the Queen was in Scotland honouring her kinsman of about 21 generations ago, Robert the Bruce, King of Scots.
650 years ago to the day, one of the great battles of our island history was fought on the fields around us. The armies were small by modern standards, but the issues were great. The passionate belief in freedom that united the Scots in 1314 has long since become part of the common heritage of all the people of this island. Nor has it abated with the years. The spark that Robert Bruce fanned to a flame at Bannockburn has in our day warmed the hearts of many peoples beyond our shores.
At the Olympics in Tokyo, Mary Rand won the long jump, and in politics, 2 important events grabbed the headlines. Sir Winston Churchill's retirement from the Commons and the general election in October, which brought Harold Wilson for the first time to number 10 Downing Street.
I have just come from the palace where Her Majesty invited me to form an administration, and I should like to take this first opportunity of pledging my colleagues and myself to do everything we can to the fullest extent of our abilities in the interests of this country and our people. We are facing at this time very great problems, but I feel there is nothing that we cannot do together.
Anne Sidney became Miss World in that year, and as usual there were reports that the Loch Ness Monster had been sighted. Early in 1965, the health of Sir Winston Churchill was causing great concern, and then on the 24th of January we heard the fateful announcement.
We announced the death of Sir Winston Churchill. The announcement came from 28 Hyde Park Gate a few minutes ago. It said that Sir Winston died shortly after 8 o'clock this morning.
And 6 days later came the state funeral of the greatest Briton of our times. Robert Hudson was at St. Paul's Cathedral.
Now, at this moment, a procession containing no fewer than 5 reigning monarchs is making its way up the long blue carpet of the nave. Queen Juliana of the Netherlands and Prince Bernhard, King Constantine of Greece, King Baudouin of the Belgians, King Olaf of Norway, King Frederick of Denmark. With them will sit in special crimson chairs to the left of the catafalque. They're just going there now. The President of the French Republic, that tall, gaunt, familiar figure, General de Gaulle, and the Grand Duke of Luxembourg,
And nearby, the presidents of Zambia, of Uruguay and Iceland, together with Prince Bertil of Sweden, the Prince of Liechtenstein, Crown Prince of Ethiopia, Prince Hassan of Jordan. And soon, in a moment, in fact now, as I speak, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, is coming up the steps to the west door, followed by the rest of our own royal family, who had no more loyal or devoted champion than the great patriot we honor today.
Her Majesty paid a unique tribute to the great statesman by coming herself to St. Paul's Cathedral instead of appointing a representative. And as Sir Winston himself had wished, the service included the famous battle hymn of the Republic, "Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord."